welcome. Thank you all for coming here tonight. My name is Penny Wright, and on behalf of all of us at the library, I want to welcome you. I want to thank a couple of people before we get started. Karen Price is here, I think. Yeah, there she is. All right, it was Karen rooted through a lot of postcards and photographs to lend us some, which were scanned and prepared by Yvette Postel in the back. And Yvette, I should say also, is also responsible for making that wonderful mixed tape of car music. Did you hear? And she and Mary Graves also prepared a reception for all of us afterwards. So thank you for that. Judy, by the way, one of our guests, also lent us a bunch of postcards, and we scanned them. And after this is over, you can come up and take a look at some of the cards. The pictures up here and posted on that board there are all cars that were in the collection of the Long Island Auto Museum. So we're really happy, and we're happy to have people who save things, like Judy obviously did. But before we begin, we would like to pay tribute to someone whom many of you knew, and it is Swede Edwards. It was Swede whose enthusiasm for the old automotive museum, and for all of Southampton history for that matter, who was the inspiration for us for wanting to continue and expand on a program that we did earlier in the year in June about the Long Island Auto Museum. Some of you were here for that, and I know that during the program he had some comments to make, and we knew that he had a lot more information up his sleeve. So we asked him to do this, and so he's our inspiration for this evening. We're really sorry and sad that he passed away, which I think most of you know. I think Gene Martin took this picture of his tow truck. Is it a tow truck?
Yeah.
Okay, tow truck. At Swede's wake, they had this truck, which was really a sweet thing for him to do. He loved it, and he will be missed and is missed by so many people. But not long before he died, I was at Swede's shop, and he was telling me that he remembered the day that the Long Island Automotive Museum opened in August of 1948. He was 9 years old, and he was riding his bike past the crowd that was celebrating the opening on his way to his caddying job. And yes, he was 9. Lois verified this. At the time, he said he was unaware of what was actually going on, but after the museum opened, at one point Swede stopped by, and Mr. Clark offered him $33 a week to work there. And Swede declined because at the time, and this is really unbelievable, but I think it's true, he was making $100 a week caddying at the golf course. This was in 1948. So he told me that several years later, the bottom fell out of caddying, or times were a little rough, so he went back to the Auto Museum, and he accepted a job working for $55 a week. Someone told me the other day that Swede was very cautious and careful about money, and he hitchhiked a ride to Riverhead because his bank in Southampton, at the rate they were paying him for his savings account, was it you, Judy? Well, somebody told me, was 0.5% lower than a bank in Riverhead. So he went and hitchhiked to Riverhead and changed his account. So we do miss Swede. As many of you know, of course, the Long Island Automotive Museum, which opened officially on August 17, 1948, was the passion and life's work of Henry Austin Clark, Jr., an heir to the company that, before the Cuban Revolution, was the Cuban American Sugar Company, and after the Revolution became the North American Sugar Company. Jack Frost Sugar was the branded product that was sold in stores. Henry Austin Clark Jr., known as Austie to many, if not most of his friends and employees, was a lover of automobiles. He was an automotive historian, a collector and restorer of old cars. He also was tremendously knowledgeable and wrote a book with his protege, Beverly Kynes, of all the cars produced in the U.S. before World War II. It was titled The Standard Catalog of American Cars, which included information on more than 5,000 cars. So I think there were probably very few people who were thought to know more about automotive history than Mr. Clark. For over 30 years, he tended and tweaked his collection with unbridled enthusiasm, delighting not only the local community but car enthusiasts from far and wide. In 1980, he closed the 3-bay Quonset hut to the public after decades of decreasing revenues, and many of his vehicles were auctioned off in front of his museum. We'll hear about that later. Actually, the famous American cartoonist Charles Addams, who reportedly died in one of Mr. Clark's cars 3 years before Mr. Clark died, was at the auction. They were placing bets on how much various cars would bring, according to one report. So we're really happy tonight to have 4 people who actually worked at the Auto Museum. And I know there are several more in the audience, so we're hoping that we can hear from you too. But I'll introduce these 4. Seated next to me is Edward Corrigan, whose grandfather, by the way, was a mason contractor who put the sidewalks and roads down in the village, and after whom Corrigan Street was named. Mr. Corrigan is married to the former Pat Jablonski from a Bridgehampton farming family, and he has spent his working years farming, landscaping, and excavating. Ed and Pat are the parents of 3. One is in Florida, Hope, and 2 are in the back, they're in the back, Ed and Maurice. So thanks for being here, guys. And we'll hear more from him in a little while. Please welcome Edward Corrigan. Seated next to Edward is Gene Martin, whose family came to this country shortly after the Mayflower. So he is what you would call a real local as well. Even though he defected and moved to Springs, where he's been living under an assumed name. No, for many years. Gene grew up in North Sea, graduated from Southampton High School in 1951 and joined the Air Force. And he spent 3 years in France working on 4x4s and 6x6s, whatever they are. Is that correct?
What was it?
I thought I wrote down 4x4s and 6x6s.
Oh, truck.
Trucks. Okay, good. He married Helen Avens in 1957, and they have 2 sons, one in San Jose, California, and the other in Riverhead. Is your son here?
No.
No, okay, all right. And Gene worked for 25 years for the Suffolk County Water Authority before retiring in 1983. Please welcome Gene Martin. John Griffin was born in Southampton, grew up here, attended schools, graduated in 1952 from high school. He went to the University of Rochester, and then he was commissioned into the Marine Corps. And were you in the Marine Corps for quite a number of years? 9.5 years. Okay. John joined the family business in 1962, while he was still in the active reserves. And at that time, as most of you know, the business was called Fordham and Ellison Painting. And in 1967, it became Griffin Painting. And John then kept the business until 2000, when he retired. John is the father of 2 grown daughters and is married to Carol Lee Griffin, who's here. There she is. Hello there. And he has had a long time and much appreciated association with the Southampton Historical Museum. Please welcome John Griffin. can very possibly deduce, our last guest, Judy Finger-Lewinsky, is the junior member of this team who spent 3 summers in high school working at the Long Island Automotive Museum. And this was in the 1970s, about 20 years after some of the others had already left. Although she was technically born in Bethpage, we consider Judy a local. Because at a young age, they moved to Southampton, and she graduated from Southampton High School, and then worked at the Old Town Animal Hospital as an animal health technician for a number of years before joining Hildreth as a housewares buyer. And then she had her own business for 10 years, a toy store, and now is back at Hildreth, where she's been for quite a number of years as well, and is still working as a buyer there. Judy loves to garden in her spare time, and we're really grateful for her presence here tonight. Please welcome Judy. Okay, so we decided that maybe before we talk about the Auto Museum, we would just bring up the subject of the Bridgehampton racetrack. Because it's sort of apparently, you can correct many mistakes if you hear them coming out of my mouth. But I understand that it actually happened a few years before the Auto Museum opened. So, let's... Okay, they weren't there too long, but now, Ed, didn't you say that it started with off-track? Can you talk about it just a little bit?
Well, they first started off running down through Sagaponic Ocean Road, and around that was a 4-mile course. And then half a dozen of them got together and bought the land up in the Scuttle Hole woods up there, and they started their own.
Was it off of Scuttle Hole Road? The racetrack?
Millstone.
Millstone, right?
Millstone.
Okay. And so, and I actually never went to the racetrack, even though I knew many people who did, but what did that consist of?
Well, they cleared the land and put the roadway in for the track, but in my estimation, they started the races too soon. The roads and for the parking area wasn't up to par for the cost of parking, and an awful lot of them got stuck.
Oh, really? You mean the people who came to see the races?
Yes. And then the following year they had another race, and there wasn't a crowd there because the facilities wasn't
Up to par?
Why,
So were there just a bunch of investors who owned that jointly? Was that the
well,
case?
they sold stock.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
And who are some of the people who...
Well, B.J. Corrigan,
Okay.
Treadwell, Alec, Stevenson,
Okay.
Momo. I guess Momo's the younger Momo down there.
Who's Momo?
He was one of the stockholders.
Okay, well, we're just...
Treadwell.
We'll do
Bruce Stevenson.
Bruce Stevenson.
Oh, you did.
He was from New York, right, Mr.
He had
Stevenson?
a place in Sagaponic.
So how many miles was the Bridgehampton race track? How long was that course?
About 3 miles.
Okay.
All these fellows here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, could you show your picture, Jean, of... There's one smallish picture you have.
What, the race cars?
With the guy in the race car, the brownish picture, you know?
All these fellows raced these cars. These were the antique cars that we raced.
Should we pass some pictures around?
Yeah.
So wait a minute. So these were antique cars that they were racing
Oh,
at
yeah,
the
they had a-
Bridgehampton racetrack?
They had a classic class.
All these cars. Yeah, one or two.
So, I mean, didn't they start racing newer cars there?
Oh, yeah,
They
yeah.
did?
I got, this is a little one. Back in the 50s.
What, now what's this car?
I think it's written on there. But all these guys raced with Briggs Cunningham. They was his, he had a lot of drivers that he used.
Now, did Briggs Cunningham come up here for the races?
Oh, yes.
Oh, sure. He drove in the races.
He did drive in it?
I don't have a picture.
So was it just something that operated in the summer months?
Yes.
And did you have to pay to go into the racetrack?
Yes.
Not much.
Not much.
That was Dave Garroway right there.
Dave Garroway in this picture. Is that a Jaguar? It says JAG.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's the Duesenberg. Eddie, we get back.
Duesenberger? Duesenberg? Okay.
Came in like 30.
Sorry about this, guys. You have to be the one to pick them all up. So, now obviously, the mic closer. And can you move up just a little tiny bit? Maybe we can turn it up the master just a hair if we can get away with it. Okay. Now, did any of these cars end up in the Long Island Automobile Museum?
No,
No,
no.
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 Well, a Duesenberg.
Okay. All right. All right. So now, what do you remember about the building of the Long Island Auto Museum? Now, Ed, didn't your family do the excavating?
No, Duran Baird did the excavating and we did all the planting.
All the plannings. That's right.
And he wanted all wild bushes around there. He didn't want anything evergreens or anything. We had to go through the woods and steal the stuff here and there. And plant it.
That was unusual for the time, right?
That's right, yeah.
Why do you think it was that he didn't want something
Well,
more manicured?
well, he had everything old and
Yeah.
cars and everything, and he wanted everything to look old.
Oh, okay.
That was
And what was the size of the property?
what the museum was.
Yeah.
It was 8 acres.
A little over
About 8
eight acres. And he had a fire truck that we had to dig a water hole in the woods. And when he gave the customers a ride, they had to go through this like a swamp, mud puddle. Everybody got wet, muddy.
So you remember even before the museum opened, and Gene, you worked for Mr. Clark, and your father did he not?
Yeah, he worked a little bit on the farm.
So how did you get to know Mr. Clark?
Well, I worked for him, before he opened, I worked for him down on South Main Street.
Okay.
And that's how he taught me how to drive a Model T. And I think this is one right here. Is that a Model T?
So he kept a Model T in his driveway?
Yeah, he had a lawn out back, had 3 or 4 cars.
Okay. So then, what, I don't think any of you went to the opening of the museum.
Well, I was probably there, but not at the building.
Okay,
Probably somewhere.
all right. So, okay, there was, let's just talk about these buildings. They were Quonset hut
Right, yes.
buildings. And were they purchased from Army surplus? Yeah, John? What can you tell us?
My involvement with the museum is really wears 2 hats. The first association I had, I think, was through the painting firm, because our firm did work for Mr. Clark on South Main Street. And I think my dad got to know him. My dad was a World War II veteran. And I have a feeling he may have introduced Mr. Clark to the idea of getting surplus Quonset huts for his museum, mainly for the price and also the durability. And so when he did that, got the go-ahead to paint them. And if you'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah.
At this time, it was interesting, if you remember, the Quonset hut was galvanized steel. And maybe you have pictures of the finished condition. And galvanized steel does not accept regular paint. So my dad researched painting manufacturing companies and found one in Brooklyn, and there were a lot in Brooklyn that manufactured wonderful products. This was a Debevoise paint manufacturing company, and they had a product called 555 Gray, thick dust primer. came in two containers. One was a short-filled, gallon-sized container, a regular paint can, and on top of it was about a 2-inch can that fit into the rim of the can below of zinc dust. This had to be thoroughly mixed, the dust into the vehicle, before it could be applied. We happened to have and had a 5-gallon mixing capability, so we would do batches for the painting of the roof, actually the whole building. And believe it or not, this entire structure is 3-coated by brush. So if you look at your picture, there'd be a team on the top going as far as they could before they slid off.
Yeah.
A ladder below, maybe 2, to pick up the band of paint coming down. And the beauty of it was, because it's corrugated, it never showed lapse. So you could take a 3 or 4 foot wide strip, paint it down, and hand it off to the team below. And they did the whole building that way with the zinc dust primer. Then 2 coats of Nancy aluminum over that. And it lasted for many, many years. And the front, which was blue, was DuPont manufacturing company, royal blue, and the white trim was a DuPont enamel also. But it had to have the zinc dust primer first. So my involvement with that was obviously seeing the guys painting there and knowing the research that went in behind it to produce the finished product that lasted for many, many years.
Well, it certainly did. In fact, you can even see a trace of it in Mary Marin's photograph, which was generously lent for this evening. I think it's still, you can tell it was blue. And that was taken in what year, John?
She actually painted it, but it's 1999.
1999.
It's an original painting.
So, I mean, was it ever repainted, John? Or did that paint job last for the life of the
I don't think
museum?
the aluminum had to be repainted, possibly the blue and the white on the front.
Okay.
And the buildings in the back got the same treatment, but I don't think they ever got the finish like the front of the building got.
Okay. And how long did it take to paint?
I honestly don't know, but a long time, probably most of the summer,
Wow, okay.
because there's that many coats and drying conditions.
So was that 3 Quonset huts that were just attached? They were all open in the inside, so describe the buildings, would you?
The inside is open.
Okay.
And then it was finished off with office, a reception,
Right.
a showroom, Judy work.
Right.
And in the back of that, it should have been on the west side, pretty much from front to back, and the back of the shop,
Okay.
machine shop. And then the other 2 domes covered the main floor, which had the automobiles on
Right.
display there.
Now, there were display cases in there too, right? And when you walked in, you could see, and what was in the display cases? All right. And can you describe these?
There's a pair of carriage lamps that he had on one of his old cars. And my son and I used to go over there every Sunday for kill a couple hours. So he grabbed a hold of my son, he was about 4 years old, and asked him if he wanted a pair of lamps. So they went out in the showroom in the largest part of the museum. In the cases, he had all kinds of lamps. So my son, Maurice, picked out this pair, and he's had another set. And Maurice wanted to electrify them, and we kind of discouraged him of doing that because the value of the lamps would just be no good anymore. So that's how I wound up with the lamps.
They're beautiful. And you can come up and see them later. Now, if he had wanted to polish those, John, what did you bring?
A rag. Don't forget the rag.
After all these years.
This is my introduction.
Now, every single person, I have to say, whom I asked about working there, mentioned polishing.
Well, I think Bill Woodby was the expert polisher.
Was he?
He did all the stuff that were in the cases. They were big headlights, all kinds of stuff.
So how often was this brass?
All brass.
And then how often would it have to be polished?
They had camphor inside the cases, so it kept them quite a while. I guess just once while I was there.
Okay, so it would last for years if you plowed
I don't know
on
about years, but probably, I don't know, what do you think?
it? You were always
In the
plowing
case-
grass?
Grass on every car.
Right.
Yeah, but in the case,
Yeah, in the cases, probably not as often, but the cars definitely.
The cars definitely. Even Jimmy and Hal Clark, whom I spoke with, they apparently polished cars, the brass as well, right? So when that place was built, were there any other businesses that you can remember that were around there possibly?
Little Joe, the repair shop, press, delicatessen across the street.
Oh, was Presses there
Oh,
at that time?
yeah.
Wow.
And a monument place was there.
Was that there? The gravestone place?
Yeah, still,
And then Norset was there, right?
he was in the back.
In the back. But the highway wasn't in,
Yeah,
in 1940, I know, but it wasn't the new highway. It was a road.
Savannah Road was still
Yeah,
what it is today, so.
yeah. Okay. And, okay, so that was the main part. And then what about out back?
Well, right behind the museum here, you had another set of buildings that went this way and that way. I guess, what, 8 or 9 sheds there, I guess?
Yeah, we made like an enclosed
Court.
yard.
Sort of a courtyard. You can
There
move
were
that a
the
little
lodges,
closer.
and the one in the back was for the Sandy Hollow Fire Department, which I can tell you about, but it was, if you look down at it from above, it was kind of a funny shaped U, with the main building on the south side, and then 2 smaller one-story structures in the back where you had spare vehicles and a fire department that we can hear about later.
Sandy Hollow.
Sandy Hollow
Well,
Fire
actually, I tried to get some details from the Clark sons. And, we do have a picture, yeah. Actually, Jimmy Clark, sent me this picture of his badge from the so-called Sandy Hollow
I got one.
Fire Department, which I hadn't known, but it actually wasn't a real fire department.
I'm not so sure.
Was it? Well, actually, but Jimmy Clark wrote me today and said it wasn't a real fire department. But I don't know.
I don't think.
Was it? Did any of you know?
No, it wasn't real.
It wasn't real. No, someone
Yeah,
mentioned that he did it because he had to establish a fire department. Was it you, Jim?
No, one of the gentlemen talked about that he wanted a badge or something, or a car.
Yeah, I got the date. I don't know if we got it. A picture of it?
Yeah, it's over here.
Oh, you
The
got it?
badge is over here.
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Oh,
so,
here it is, yeah.
oh yeah, there we go. Captain, is this Mr. Clark's badge? Okay. So he obviously just loved badges and cards and everything else. Now, apparently, he had a lot of parts, did he not?
Upstairs, well, in the building here, you had a second floor. Only went to a third of the building, and it was loaded. I don't even know if he knew what it was. It's just stuff he bought, tractor trailer or whatever.
Was he organized? I mean,
No.
But, I mean, and did other people contact him? I understand that they did.
I
To
think
find parts.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Especially Model T.
Okay.
Well, he sold Model T parts, I guess he had a catalog. And Peabo, I guess, kind of sold them how he used them.
Okay.
He was another
Uh,
worker.
One day he had me go up to Port Jefferson, it was hotter than hell, and he bought, we had a 3-story building there that was full of parts. We were up there at least 3 days cleaning the stuff out of there and put it back into the museum. And in the back of the shop, he had a room somewhat to store parts and nuts and bolts and everything that you name it, he had it there.
Now, Ed, you drove and picked up cars for him
Right, yes.
quite a bit, right? Well, tell us about your longest day.
He was opening up a museum in the city called the Carnival of Cars. So he had about 25 cars, 30 cars. I took him to Manhattan and warehouse storage there, so we'd have them ready to go into the new place. So I got in there, I was making 2 trips to the city a day. I'd leave at 7, and I'd be back out here again at 12. They'd load the trailer and truck again, and I'd go back in. So this one afternoon, he says, I got a car out in Pennsylvania. He said, I want you to go pick up. So I said, I know, Pennsylvania somewhat, but I don't know all of it. So he says, I got someone to go with you. So we pulled out of the city at 3:30, got out in Pennsylvania, put the car on a trailer and come back. I dropped the fella off and up 125th Street, worked my way out, got out by the Bluebird and Riverhead there. Goddamn big ship come across the road. So I stopped, got out, walked around everything a couple times, got back in the truck. I said, well, I'm not going to take this over to the museum, because it was about, I don't know, 3:30, 4 o'clock at that time. So I said, I'll put it in the yard. So I got into bed, I guess about a half hour after that, the fire whistle blew. Of course, I was a fireman. And then the heavens opened up. So I didn't go to the fire. So I had to take the truck over and put it inside. But I don't think to this day that he knew that everything in there got soaked. So that's,
Did he appreciate this,
I've been up to Boston, all over, picking up cars for him, bringing them back to the museum.
This was before, cell phones, GPS, so you had to really find your way around a lot of places, right? Before interstates. So how many cars would you say were, at any given time at the museum? What about you, Gene?
I said 75, I guess.
Okay.
Had some out in the back.
And was he buying and selling quite a bit?
I think he did, yeah. If he found something good, he'd buy it.
Yeah.
But a lot of them needed restoring, so it went to Joe Sidam or somebody else.
Now, he had, some restoration work was done on the property, is that correct? Or was it all done by a fellow in New Jersey?
Well, it was done different places, I think.
Okay.
He had one guy that painted. Bill Pritchett.
Bill Pritchett.
Was he in Southampton?
Yeah.
Behind Einstein's gas station.
Okay.
Got a shop on Mill Street.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the back. So he had the work done. I don't think he did any restoration.
Change fires.
I didn't do much of that either. I don't think. Maybe.
Now, I guess on the day they opened, he hired a helicopter, right?
I don't know anything about that. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
You can see that online. If you
Oh, you
Google
can?
it. Yes, the opening. And it shows you the camera footage that they took all through the village and the museum. It's really very interesting.
I also understand they had at least one fashion show there. But I guess none of you were there.
Oh,
I
yeah.
wasn't.
And there were models who came out from the city.
Right, you wouldn't give a nickel for me. When they got ready to put the show on, it was something different.
Yeah, they did, I don't know. They called it beautiful, but I don't know.
Now, were the cars in in the museum, were they pretty much all in working condition?
Brass was shining.
The grass was shining.
With that bottle right there.
Oh, the other thing people mentioned doing a lot was sweeping.
I don't know if we swept that, right?
Because at least one person said that because of where it was situated, dust would come in all the time.
Had the doors open.
Yes.
It was pretty dusty in the backyard.
Yeah.
When, all windows on the front, they were always open. And in the back too.
Okay. I also heard from something I read that he had a gas-powered pogo stick.
I never saw it.
All right,
That was there for me.
all right. What about fire trucks?
Yeah.
And tell us about the fire truck then.
Well, we have the old Model T Chiefs
Yeah, that-
vehicle, we have a picture of that. And he got the well, hooking ladder that
That's his
Southampton
favorite
had.
car.
And when they got ready to get the new one, American of France, and right after World War II, they donated the old hook and ladder to him. And then the antiques, the Southampton Fire Department now has it, participates in quite a few of the parades. They take it out to Harrisburg, to shows, and been down to Texas. We've had a lot of good times with it.
So it's
That's one that Bill Pritchard painted, by the way.
It
And it
is.
was in, I don't know, gold leaf. Beautiful job.
He had to get.
Are there many trucks of that vintage around, or is that pretty
There's only
unusual?
two- There's only two left.
Really? Wow,
Not many.
not many.
And a lot is beautiful.
Okay. Why don't we talk about some of the cars that he had, some of the real standouts?
Well, he had that 1933 silver one, called the Silver Shadow, I think.
That wasn't a
It was
Mercer,
in
right?
like the, huh?
Do you have a picture of it here?
I don't have that one on. That's a very valuable car. Of course, the Mercer is very valuable too. That sold for $2.5 million last summer.
Now, that was owned by Hal, is that correct?
Hal had it. Yeah.
Hal had it? You have a picture of that?
That's the car.
And where was that auctioned off?
In San Diego.
Okay,
Well, I don't know how he got it out there.
yeah.
Hal drove it up on the stage. Auctions it all.
Uh-huh. Really?
Looked just like the old man. So
Um,
that's him being the old man.
What about Simplex? Is that somebody's, do you have a picture of that?
Married
She
in
has
that
a
one.
one.
That's the Simplex.
And was that unusual? Some of these cars, I think you told me, were sort of one-of-a-kind cars.
Coons Finch, one of a kind.
One of a kind.
One of a kind. It was the first Hemi, and it went so fast they didn't build anymore. My favorite museum.
Florida State.
How fast did it
I
go?
think it went about 60. It's a 1906 Coons Finch. Coons Finch. Read the back.
Well, this Mercer we had up to 87 in Virginia
Really?
at 1911. And
Oh.
some other guy raced it once, he had it over 90. But those old front wheels go like this. Spooky.
So how many miles were these cars good for in the life of the car?
Not that much, I don't know. Like a Model T, if you got, I guess, 50,000, you were lucky. Because the bearings of Babbitt was very
Okay.
soft and it wears out.
Okay. What about an electric car?
He had two of them, right?
He did?
Had a Woods, and it was like a white with it.
So I had no idea that there had been an electric car produced back then.
They should have stuck with them.
They should have stuck with it. Why didn't they?
Tesla wasn't born yet.
All right, so speaking of Tesla, why don't you show us your picture?
Well, that's a different Tesla.
I know it's totally unrelated, but it's still kind of a cool story.
I don't know if any of you saw this before.
See that tower? So Gene has one of the few pictures of
I have the
this
original.
that is
This
no
is just a
longer.
copy.
So tell us about that.
Well, Tesla built this tower, and he claimed he could put electricity anywhere on the earth and give it away free. So all of, how are you going to put a meter on something that's free? So all the money dried up. And the government blew it up before the First World War, because they were afraid the Germans were going to use it for a radio tower.
Really?
So off it went.
Okay.
But the foundation, you can Google it, and you can still see the foundation.
And it's the same Tesla after which the Tesla was.
Well, I guess somehow it's related.
Yeah.
There's only one.
There's only one.
Nikolai.
Oh, really?
His building is still there. Right.
It was also the one that invented AC. but there was so much money involved with J.P. Morgan installing DC in New York City, they put it down. I think Westinghouse built a power plant up in Niagara Falls. And
Well, he was part of that.
Transmitting, Tesla was the designer of the LTC.
Okay.
Even this is his invention, right?
There was a terrific PBS hour special on Tesla, and we saw it with back to the first the Tesla, an hour on Tesla, showing the tower and the whole, you know, its whole approach.
This thing's like 180 foot tall.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then 2 hours on Edison, and it was.
Well, Edison stole all his ideas and patents.
Yes.
Really?
I'm sorry, say it again.
I said
And
Edison
patents.
stole
Yes,
all
that's
his patents
absolutely, absolutely.
and ideas,
And Westinghouse also.
and the government stole some too.
Now, was there, what about, okay, so there were 2 electric cars. What about an amphibious car? Was somebody mentioned that? Was it you, Judy?
Yes, it was an amphibious car, it belonged to the Essays, the local Essays owned it, but it was on display at the museum. Then it was a car that would drive on the road and then go right in the water and be a boat. It was really very neat, and I hear they still have it, Yampa car, we have a photo of it.
Where,
When you're done, come look at it. When you're done, come look, there's a photo. Yeah.
so it actually worked and
Yes,
people used it?
yes, I don't know how many were made, if that was a popular model or
I
not.
saw a photograph of something like 4 or 5 of them driving across the basin. Some magazine.
Now, what about the car that was hoisted up on the, wasn't there a car on the
Yeah.
roof?
It's the
What was
old-
that?
That's the Oldsmobile. Up over the doorway.
Okay.
1903.
That was a reproduction pole, wasn't it?
No. It was gutted, there wasn't anything in it. He had a 1903 in the back that was, I don't know if it ran or not, maybe, I don't know.
Now, did he let you folks drive his
Oh, yeah.
cars? So tell us about that a little bit.
Well, I drove the electric car in, and of course I learned with the Model T. I used to take one home for lunch.
You did? That was nice of him.
Yeah, it was.
I was 14 at the time when I started working there. My first job was working papers, and there was a big thrill that Mr. Clark let me drive, I think it was a 1932 Packard, from what was parked in the back to on display in the front every morning, 12 cylinders in line. And the windshield was about that wide, and couldn't even see the hood ornament. But it was a real thrill to take that thing out in the morning, polish it, of course. Park.
Well, that one didn't have much grass. That Buick did though. That was loaded.
Now, Judy, you have a car story.
I actually was able to borrow 2 cars for our wedding. So when we got married here at the Presbyterian Church, we had the Simplex and the auto car waiting outside for us after the ceremony, which was really very special. My husband says when we came out of the church, he thought the crowd was so big looking at the cars, they probably thought a movie star was getting married. It was just us. Which was cute. And then actually Karen Price's brother David tells a cute story. He was one of the drivers. He drove the auto car at my wedding. Lance Aldridge drove us in the Simplex. A few years later, David gets married and borrows the same cars. He ended up not in the Simplex, in the family station wagon.
Yeah, the station wagon.
Because the Simplex wouldn't start.
It wouldn't
Lance
start.
was devastated. Lance and David had spent all kinds of time, I mean, the Auto Museum had been closed for years by that point. Mr. Clark was nice enough to, David contacted him, go ahead, open it. He and Lance got it all buffed up, running and everything, and Lance couldn't start it that morning, so my brother and his bride left in the family station wagon.
So I was fortunate.
But it was quite nice of him to,
Yes.
must have
yes.
trusted you all with
Yes.
his.
Oh, yeah.
He was
But
very
I
trustworthy.
realized today he actually lent us a car for our senior yearbook photograph. On the cover, we have actually a car, the Locomobile,
Okay.
that was on our cover with some of my classmates in it. So it was really very nice. He was very generous.
So, Judy, what years did you work there, and who did you work with?
I worked with Maureen McGee, and a girl named Carla Webb had been there for several years. She only worked one summer with me. And I got the job through a classmate of my older brother who had worked there. His name was Guzzy.
Okay.
AKA Bob Guzowitz, and I understand his sister worked there before he did.
Well, Pat.
Mhm,
Yeah,
yes.
Pat worked here. This-
So then her younger brothers who got
Okay.
me the job.
Okay.
And then Ann Bishop Rachel
Ann
started
Bishop.
working on there, and then later on Karen Price started working there.
Okay.
And
So
then
what kind of a boss was he? And what did you do at work?
we collected admissions, which we didn't have very many, unfortunately. It was at the very end of the museum's history. A lot of people did not come in, so we polished brass. What a surprise there. We
Played
swept the
cards.
floor.
Played a lot of cards.
Yeah, we-
That's what I heard.
We played gin rummy an awful lot.
And so tell me how you were paid.
Every day, a different person was paid out of cash from the safe. We couldn't all get paid on the same day because there was never enough money in the safe.
So this is money from the admission?
Yes, from the admissions,
And
yes.
they sold little model cars and
Yes.
postcards. There was some things they sold.
Small little
Oh,
gift
I
shop.
see.
Prints.
So we probably sold more postcards than anything else.
They sold, you could buy postcards individually,
Yes.
or you could buy a whole box, which I think
In
was about
sets.
500,
Yeah.
or a little more than 500. So I bought the whole box of 500, but I had them in the city. I looked a little bit before this was time to find them, and I didn't like really find them to bring them, but it was like 500 cards, and I don't know if all of them had once been in the museum or other cards from other places.
On the back of the postcard, it'll tell you if it was from his collection or not.
It was a great collection.
Yeah, a lot of
Judy,
those postcards.
you gave me where is that? Admission, is it over there?
Yes.
It's a season pass.
Yes, and that was in Karen's box of postcards that she found in her.
Okay, here. And then I see the date is 1952.
Yeah, I wasn't around then.
And the season pass cost $1.50. I mean, that's what it says on
It
that.
does, yes.
Do you remember what the admission charge was when you folks worked there?
We were talking, and none of us can really remember. We
It
all
was like
remember
$1.50 to get it.
I know, we all remember the chart on the wall. So if a family with 3 kids came on, it was 2 adults, 3 kids, you
Right.
came across and there was.
Oh, yeah, that was a very clever thing. Describe that.
We all remember that.
That was kind of a clever
It
chart.
was just like a number of adults in a party and a number of children in a party, and you just counted the kids, counted the adults, came across, and you went to the people and said it's $8.50 or something
So
like
you
that.
didn't have to do any math in your head.
You didn't have to think.
Now, so how often would he show up at the museum?
Maybe once a day, if that, just kind of pop in, say hello,
Okay.
talk to Herb McCarthy,
Yeah.
get a lunch.
And what about his wife, Wally?
She came in now and again to take any money out of the safe that we didn't need.
Did you pay yourselves or did someone pay you?
I think we were in
You
charge
paid
of it.
yourselves, that's nice.
Really, he had high school kids in charge of the whole place.
Right.
And we did a good job. We were hard workers.
What did you call him?
I think we called him Mr. Clark. I don't remember calling him Austin, but yeah, Mr. Clark.
Because a lot of people knew him, called him Austin.
You used to have those little pink message pads.
Uh-huh.
People would call, and if they said, leave a message for Henry, he'd look at it, and he'd look right at you, and he'd say, did he call me Henry or Rusty? And you'd say, he called you Henry, and he'd just crumple it up, throw it in the garbage.
For some reason, you didn't like Henry.
I didn't like him.
Yeah, that they didn't know.
Much like Austin.
So, by the time that you worked there, Judy, I think the museum was winding down, right?
Yes, I worked there right before it actually closed. I think I only
And
missed
you said there
one.
were leaks in the roof? or-
Yes,
That's that
unfortunately.
lousy paint
It
job.
was, but it was quite a few years later after it was
Yeah.
painted. But yes, when it rained, we put buckets
Blame it on
down.
someone.
You put buckets?
Yes, we put buckets down when it rained now and again.
When did it close?
I think in 1980.
Yeah,
Columbus
80,
Day,
Karen?
I think it was Columbus Day weekend 80, and then the auction was Columbus Day 81.
Okay.
And so tell us about the auction. Was anybody there?
Karen actually worked the
You were
auction.
there.
I was not, so she would be the one to tell you.
So tell us about the auction.
Oddly enough, the one thing I think Mr. Adams was there.
Yeah, I'm told he was
Yeah, I
there.
think he was there, and I just, I was working with a gal in the office, maybe one of you guys remember who she was. She was very good friend, they were very good friends with his, and they were from Dayton, Ohio. And they used to come out commonly, and I was working in the office with her, collecting, who was paying for what, how they were paying,
Right.
doing all that sort of stuff, and I just I remember when it was all over, I've never seen so much money in a day in my life. But I was 18, so
It was a success. And he was the auctioneer, right?
I think he was,
I've read that several
I think
places.
he did the Land's End of it, but then there was this other, the husband of this lady that was from Dayton.
Oh, I
Her
see.
husband did some of it also.
Okay.
They kind of tag teamed, but he did the lion's share of it. And it wasn't just all the cars that day, it was things from up in the Iron Range, from upstairs. And he'd often have sales of things upstairs.
He did, okay.
See, I was there like the last 2 years, and I know Judy and them, he used to not spend that much time in the office. When I was there, he was there considerably, like he was there every day.
He was probably getting ready to.
But I was
close up
there
his shop.
the last 2 years.
Now, we didn't talk about, wasn't there some driving happening in back of the museum?
Well, yeah, a couple.
Was there a track or anything?
Well, it's a dirt road that went around the back.
Okay,
You take a bunch of kids on a fire truck, break the bell.
right.
So, I guess Ray Peterson did it. I don't know about Norris, I don't think Norris.
Yeah, let's mention some of the
Bob
people,
Clark.
some of the people who you remember having worked there. Some of the people. Bill Woodby
And I worked with his son Ray.
and Ray Woodby.
Yeah, and then Lance Aldridge's father worked there, Eddie Aldridge.
Eddie.
Okay.
Well, I don't know, he didn't work there when I was there. He used to come in now and again, but I don't think he worked.
Did Eddie work there, Karen?
I think he was, I think he did some
Huh?
stuff
He
there.
wasn't steady.
No, I don't think so.
Norris's son right there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Eddie'd show up on a Sunday and play with the
Oh,
ball or
yeah.
something.
Fred Ritz?
Yeah, Freddie was.
Joanna Halsey worked there.
Joanna Wilson. So, Ann, what did you do when you worked there?
What Judy said, I mean, I worked with, it would be funny because it'd be 3 of us in the office, as if it was going to be busy. And we literally played cards most of the time. And we'd help the guys polish brass, and we would, like you said, there's a few people would come through, but it wasn't anything like busy. And we just passed the time.
We dusted a lot.
Yeah, we did.
And dusted and Windexed a lot of the cases.
Yes, we kept
Because
it very
kids would always
clean.
put their fingerprints on everything, so you'd have to Windex the cases every day.
How much did you see of Hal and Jimmy Clark?
I never saw, I mean, I knew Hal through my brother, but I never saw him at the museum.
Okay,
And the 2 summers that I worked there, I have to say, Mr. Clark wasn't around a lot.
he wasn't.
I don't think he ever.
Well, it must have been hard for him when he had to close up his business and
I
start
would think so.
getting rid of that collection. Apparently, he had a huge library in Glen Cove. Right?
Tons and tons.
Did you go to that other house?
No, I didn't, but I knew he had some in
Yeah.
Southampton.
Yeah.
And I guess when they took it to the Henry Ford Museum, they used tractor trailers to take it up
So I hear. So his
And
collection
it's
is
still
one of
there.
the
You can
main
still see it.
collections in the Henry Ford Museum.
Right. And it's on display, but it'd take you 4 years to look through it. So
Did any of you ever see him after the museum closed?
much. I didn't.
I saw some of the cars, because a couple of the cars went up to Owl's Head, Maine. And I went up there and saw a couple of the cars up
Oh,
there
really?
at the museum in Owl's Head, bought a couple.
You good?
How many of you all remember going to the museum? I mean, a lot of you were local.
Yeah.
So a lot of. Does anybody? Would it be possible to hear anyone's impressions or have a couple of people talk about going there when they were younger? Got a microphone? Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, you can tell us. Yeah,
Well, I was a child.
you were a child. Basically, you hadn't been born yet.
Probably not one of those.
I mean, I remember it was exciting to go. We went a couple of times, and it was always a place whenever my mother had company. That was like the spot, and I do remember the chart. Because I remember we'd look and we'd be like, Mom, it's this much. I remember that. And I remember, and I think this is correct, but I do remember the double-decker bus being in there at one point, because that was so cool. We'd never seen anything like that. So that's
Right.
like, I was really very,
But
very young.
did you
I
ever go
repeat.
as a school group or just be?
No, my mother. It was like a big thing
The
with my
school
mother.
groups did go there at one point.
Oh, yeah. When it first opened, they had kids go
Yeah,
with a bus, you know, with
yeah. Does anybody else have anything to add? Oh, John?
Started out by talking about painting the museum. And I also mentioned the fact that we painted Mr. Clark's house on South Main Street. And it was wooden clapboard. Wooden clapboard in this area does not hold paint. Mr. Clark, with tongue-in-cheek, would have his checks printed, which he'd pay his bills with. In the upper left-hand corner, they said Peeling Manor.
Not what you wanted to use as an advertisement, was it? That's funny.
so that wasn't the paint.
By the way, his business cards, I'm sure some of you know this, but what did they say? His business cards?
I don't think they did when we were there, so.
Oh, they didn't?
I don't think so.
Photographer of old cars and young women.
Well, he used to take pictures of the girls in high school used to come and he'd take pictures. Somewhere there must be a million pictures.
It was lucky he lived in the 50s. Shall we open it up if anybody has any questions for any of these folks? Do you want to take a question or?
Matter of fact, the
What were you
book had to be
saying?
pushed out so we could take a picture of, he was there.
Right.
Oh, yeah. We used to run around and give you
All
fun.
right, so we have a question from the audience.
Do you want to wait
Okay.
for the mic?
Yeah, give it a mic.
You said it closed in 1980?
You said-
81.
What?
I think it was 81.
Because I bought my house in '83. I was coming out here before that, but
Well, the building was still here. Oh,
when I
did you-
bought the postcards and all that, so maybe it was before I even
Well,
got here full
yeah,
time.
maybe it was before you were here full time, because by all accounts, the auction had happened by then. Okay, any other questions here? Oh, yeah, well, okay.
Some of my early recollection of the Auto Museum, I lived on Layton Avenue
Uh-huh,
here in the village, and nearby was the Stacky Farm. They had a large potato barn in the back, which is still there. Boston Clark stored a lot of his cars early on. Most of them were derelicts, as I recall as a kid.
was that on Layton Avenue?
Yes.
Wow.
It's behind Barney McCabe's house.
Or you had them in good shape.
So that
Oh,
was
okay.
all farmland at that time.
Okay.
Sometime later, I was a friend of Swede. We were schoolmates, grew up together. We would go to the museum. We knew Norris Hocking at that time. I would think this was probably 1952, 53. We would hang out and visit Norris. And at one time, the Bridgehampton Road Track race, the museum hosted Briggs Cunningham. It was Cunningham Specials. One year, I recall, they were there.
Well, he was there quite a bit.
Yeah.
Briggs raced all over.
No, I caddied Shinnecock Golf Club.
I did
and-
too.
And I recall,
Oh, really?
often the caddies, at the end of the day, they would go to the parking lot and hang around for a ride.
I used to caddy for Gary Cooper,
You did?
Yes.
and he had a Duesenberg, and it was in a museum in California. And I went to see it. And the guy said, I told him, I said, I've been in that club. He, no, you were in that club. I said, don't tell me. He used to pick me up at the house and take me up to the golf club.
I recall getting a ride home to Boston Park in the 1911 red Mercer race stop. He dropped me at my front door.
Wow.
A lot of old race, you know, Joe Tracy was up there. All these race car drivers were there, Tommy Cole.
So what was it like to caddy for Gary Cooper?
Just like he was in the movies.
Yeah.
Had one big word. Yup.
Was he a good tipper?
Well, he paid me for 18, but he'd only go 9. He said, you walk 18, I'll pay you anyhow.
A good loop, 1953, 54 was maybe $12 for a double 18 hole.
That's a lot for then, isn't it?
Compared to what they get today.
No, I'm sure, but
Yeah, now they got a golf cart.
I mean, we were babysitters and we got 35 cents an hour. So, I mean, if you were a
You
girl.
babysit office kids?
No. No. But we were neighbors, so we kind of knew them a little bit.
Well, I think there was only two. So what's the old one, Ann?
And maybe there's a fourth one. I remember Jimmy and Hal, and I remember Ann.
There's three.
Yeah.
Each, when he got rid of the museum,
Oh,
each
Cynthia,
one
so
got
maybe
a
there's
car of their choice. And Hal took the Mercer, which he got 2.5 million for. But he had 3 kids. He said, I can't cut the car in 3 pieces, so he sold it and gave him the money.
But Hal was the sole owner of the Mercer?
Yeah, each one got one. I think the girl got a Ferrari. And Jimmy, I'm not sure what he got. Do you know what he got?
I thought actually Cynthia got the MG, because I
Oh,
thought that was
couldn't
her
be.
car.
Well, then the other one got
We
the
talked about that.
Ferrari.
So I don't really know.
And Jimmy probably got the Ferrari.
There was another question. Okay. Hold it close, yeah.
Is there any interest in resurrecting this museum?
It's up for sale.
But the
Or
children,
unless somebody comes with plenty of money,
No.
because they won't sell it cheap. And then you gotta build a whole new building. That building is shot.
the children aren't interested.
And we don't have anybody to paint it.
I like that.
I don't think it seems like a practical possibility.
All the car museums, the Collier Brothers in Florida, they shut down. You just can't do it. I think Harrods sold most of their stuff.
Yeah.
Now, when I was, in my teens back in the 60s, I used to love to read my automotive magazines. And when there would be articles about the museum and about the Bridgehampton racetrack, I mean, that just made dreams, it was just, wow, this stuff was really real, and it was so exciting to read those stories. Yeah, I was up in New Hampshire, I wasn't
So it was
here.
a famous place.
Well, very, very much so,
How many museums that were kind of museums about cars were there in the whole country?
Well, they're scattered all over.
There.
Somewhere out west, I don't even know the state I was in. I had clear.
Most every town almost has one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and even Briggs Cunningham had a few cars.
Especially in the town that was involved in manufacturing, like out there, Auburn, Indiana, that
Okay.
fantastic museum.
Were they pretty safe? I mean, were there accidents?
With his car?
Yeah.
Not that I know of. Did you have one? This is the only guy that could drive the Opel Astra.
Right. Any more questions? Oh, Mary, you have a question. Can you give her the microphone? Wait, Mary. Yeah, but some people can't hear you. But we'll use the microphone.
Does anyone recall Mr. Clark's writing a column for a magazine?
Yes.
Because our son Bill worked for a couple of years when he was in high school, but collected some of those magazines. And Mr. Clark wrote well.
Wow. Well, he certainly produced an impressive book, too, so he must have been working all the time on his knowledge about cars. Well, it's called the catalog, let's see, I'll find it. It was all the cars, 5,000 cars before World War II. And I can give you the name afterwards. It was called the Standard Catalog of American Cars. With information on more than 500 cars, yeah.
Does this library have the book?
I don't believe so.
Probably not.
You should get it.
It is probably not available, although maybe it could be. I have no idea. You can ask them at the reference desk. Yeah.
Really? There you go.
Yep.
Good.
If it still exists, it would be a very cool thing to have in the Long Island collection. Because actually,
Well, it might be
since
something
these
different.
photographs have been scanned, they will be eventually on our website eventually, and people can get to see them. The other thing I want to mention is that this program is being filmed, and eventually it will end up on the library's website. For those of you who want to learn how to access our programs, it's something that a lot of people do not know, but you're able to watch a number of programs, and this will be one of them. It will also be available on Channel 22 on CTV. It probably won't be for a month or two. And it will also be transcribed. So, and that transcription will be housed in the Long Island room in the library. So I think we will...
And just to preserve, not just the book for the library, but all those postcards, maybe to get them digital.
That's what I...
And get all those postcards maybe.
No, that's what I said. All these postcards have been scanned, and they will be.
The whole 500?
No.
No.
No. That would be a project for a very eager volunteer. Perhaps that's you. Anyway, I think we will we'll end now, and hope you will stay and join us for some refreshments. But I want to really thank the four of you for coming in to share your memories. Oh, and we have something for each of you. Yeah. Rogers Memorial Library bag.
No.
Your bread.
Yeah, people
Slightly
can't.
overcooked bread.
Kind of rabbit.
One for you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Thank you.
John.
Thank you.